Donald Trump has lost control, and he knows he has lost control. Donald Trump has lost control of everything he thought he could control. He lost control of his war in Iran as soon as he started it. He's lost control of the Republican legislative process in Congress and is unable to get his bill through the Republican-controlled Senate, the bill that would allow Donald Trump to interfere in our elections. And Donald Trump's reaction to the loss of control is his most reliable reaction to everything. He lies. Or perhaps at this stage of what could be Donald Trump's neurological decline, he is not lying. He may just be hallucinating. This weekend, which he spent publicly proving that he can still drive a golf cart while being guided by the Secret Service, Donald Trump made a public statement on social media. This was on Saturday. At 3:52 p.m., Donald Trump posted, "Great poll numbers, thank you, 3 exclamation points." Now, of course, Donald Trump didn't say what poll numbers he might have been referring to, but at this point, we should know that he wasn't referring to any poll numbers at all. That was just Donald Trump's reaction to his provably terrible poll numbers, something he cannot control. The Marquette Law School poll that had just come out showed that 70% of Americans disapprove of how Donald Trump is handling the economy. Donald Trump knows that those poll numbers exist, and Donald Trump knows there is absolutely nothing he can do to control his poll numbers. And because Donald Trump knows that he has no control over the events swirling around him, which are the result of his own ignorance and incompetence, that's what has led to his poll numbers. And we have breaking news reporting, as Rachel just indicated. We have breaking news reporting tonight about something else Donald Trump has lost control of. His choice of airplane. And it's much worse than we thought. It was widely reported that when Donald Trump left the NATO summit in Turkey last month, he did not use the 747 that the dictator of Qatar gave to Donald Trump as a gift. Important reporting by the New York Times and others showed that the Qatari jet does not have all of the equipment, including the security equipment, on the real Air Force One, which then arrived in Turkey apparently to take the place of Donald Trump's favorite new plane for security reasons. But tonight, in what was first exclusively reported by the Washington Post says, an Iranian assassination threat against President Donald Trump prompted an extraordinary operation last month in which he flew secretly from Turkey on an alternate military aircraft while the White House said he was aboard Air Force One, the Washington Post has learned. The clandestine mission, which has not been reported previously, was carried out unbeknownst to journalists and some White House staff members who believed they were on the same plane as the president, according to material reviewed by the Post, a U.S. official familiar with the operation and another person with knowledge of the president's travel. In Ankara, Trump boarded the old Air Force One jumbo jet in view of television cameras. He was secretly shuttled minutes later to a smaller plane, an Air Force C-32A, via an airport catering truck, typically used to load meals and other supplies pre-flight, according to the U.S. official and corroborating material reviewed by the Post. That made Air Force One a decoy, with media and some White House staff aboard, the official said. The operation occurred a night after U.S. forces renewed military strikes on Iran at Trump's direction following a breakdown of negotiations between Washington and Tehran. A White House spokesperson did not deny the Washington Post's reporting and instead issued a statement simply saying, as the president has said recently, there are many enemies of America who have their sights on him, and we use every tool at our disposal to address those threats. There are many, many ways for Donald Trump to experience just how much control he does not have. Every day that the Senate is in session, the Republican leader of the Senate refuses to even attempt a vote on the legislation that Donald Trump calls the SAVE Act, that Donald Trump wants to pass, that would give him the ability to interfere in our elections. And every once in a while, Donald Trump issues a threatening social media post about passing that legislation in the Senate, and then he does absolutely nothing because Donald Trump cannot control the Republican Senate to give him everything he wants legislatively. And just imagine tonight what a loss of control Donald Trump must have been feeling in Turkey when he was told that he not only could not fly on the Qatari jet that he illegally accepted as a gift from a dictator, but he could not fly on Air Force One. The Washington Post reports numerous people participated in the deception, some unwittingly, and journalists who thought they were traveling with the president aboard the Legacy Air Force One were not notified that he had changed aircraft or made aware of the extent of the threat on Air Force One, the U.S. officials said. The new Air Force One jet gifted by Qatar departed Turkey first early in the evening of July 8th. Trump then boarded the Legacy blue and white Air Force One at dusk, waving goodbye on camera to exit that plane without being seen by those uninvolved in the operation. Trump and several aides stepped aboard an airport catering truck which was elevated plane side using hydraulics and positioned at a door on the opposite side of Air Force One's entrance, according to the U.S. official and other corroborating material. It's not clear how Trump moved from the C-32A to the Legacy Air Force One after landing, but he appeared before television cameras and descended external stairs from the Legacy Air Force One about 10:56 p.m. And so, Donald Trump had no control at all of how he traveled away from that NATO summit. No control. In a plane he never wanted to fly in, moving on a catering truck from one plane to another to do that, because Donald Trump was not in control of that situation. And we are now at day 164 of the war that Donald Trump started and cannot control. Donald Trump wanted this war to be over in days. Donald Trump's initial public estimates of how long his war would take were given in days and sometimes at the most in weeks. He never said it would take 164 days. Along with all of the usual pressures to end an unpopular war, Donald Trump faces the political pressure of the coming election, which is now 85 days away. The best measure to use when trying to project how much longer a war will last is to consider the negotiating positions of the warring parties and ask how long it would take for those negotiating positions to get close. When Donald Trump began his war, his negotiating position for ending his war included a complete change of governing regime in Iran and a promise that the new regime in Iran would never develop nuclear weapons, something that the regime in Iran had already promised and put in writing in a deal negotiated by Secretary of State John Kerry on behalf of President Obama. That nuclear deal in which Iran promised to never, ever, ever develop a nuclear weapon was working perfectly when Donald Trump, in his first term, decided to withdraw the United States from that agreement. And so, Donald Trump's opening negotiating position in his war was for Iran to please agree to what Iran had already agreed to with President Obama. And 164 days later, the warring parties have never been farther apart. And Donald Trump cannot even pretend to have the slightest bit of control over what happens next.